6 of the 8 people killed in the shootings were Asian women. The tragedy in Atlanta has brought anti-Asian racism to the forefront, but incidents of anti-Asian hate crimes in Canada and the United States have been on the rise, particularly since the beginning of the pandemic. For more, let's bring in our panelists. Joining me now from San Francisco is Vincent Pan. He is the Executive Director of Chinese for Affirmative Action, and from Calgary, Teresa Woo-Paw. Teresa is the Chair of the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. And Teresa, I want to start with you and your reaction to what has happened in Atlanta. The police in the Cherokee County got a lot of backlash for first appearing sympathetic to the suspect. They seemed to dismiss racism as a motivation because the shooter said he was driven by sexual addiction. Is the way that the shootings have been framed by police and the media, has that been problematic?
I believe so. First, I think my heart goes out to the family of the victims. These women are people that their family depend on. We saw images of their family yesterday. These families are hurting. And when things like this happen, the community also feels the pain and the grief. It is very unfortunate. Some of the first statements came from the police was one of, sympathy to the shooter. I think that is also symptomatic of the structural discrimination against racialized groups. So it's certainly, I think it's very concerning and disturbing.
And Vincent, I wanted to get your reaction and your thoughts about what has transpired over the past couple days.
Well, it's incredibly painful. I think the community is outraged and hurting. And I think the broader public is also shocked. But we really shouldn't be surprised because we know that hate incidents against Asians have been rising for more than a year because of the pandemic, and also have been a part of our country's histories, both in Canada and the United States. And so what we have to do is understand that there's a need to hold individuals accountable, but to take this moment to try and hold systems accountable that continue to allow racism and misogyny to exist.
Right, and Vincent, just to go further on that, I did want to ask about how people can be held accountable, how that can be moved forward, because we are, as you're mentioning, seeing almost 4,000 incidents of anti-Asian racist incidents in the United States. In Canada, we're just seeing some stats here. We see verbal harassment, shunning, physical assault. We've seen a lot of physical assault, especially against older Asian people, civil rights violations. In Canada, we've seen an uptick. The number of incidents is actually more per capita in Canada than in the United States. And in Vancouver, we saw a 717% increase over the past year since the beginning of 2020, I should say. So what needs to be done then in terms of holding people accountable?
Well, I think we need a whole of society approach that really looks at all of these different systems, and to understand that if we can prevent and intervene, we can stop incidents from escalating both in severity and also number. From the data and the research that we've done, we know that being able to address bullying in schools, verbal harassment on public transit, making sure that private businesses are not discriminating against their customers or their employees, all that will have an effect. I think that the outrage right now around the physical assaults is also important, and we do need very, very strong, assertive community safety programs that really center victims and survivors, and understand that in many cases, victims are not receiving culturally competent services, and they're not receiving the support that they need. So I do think it's a whole of society approach, and that many of the interventions have less to do with the criminal justice system, but have to do with our public health systems, our education systems, and basically anywhere where people are gathering and able to congregate.
Right, and Teresa, can you touch upon how racism, especially against Asians and the Asian community here, is playing out, how it is impacting those who are affected by it?
Well, I think that 6.1 million Asian Canadians living in perpetual fear is certainly not acceptable in a country like Canada. We have heard from the grassroots that people are living in fear, and to the extent that they're afraid to pick up even brochure on how to actually respond to racist incidents. So I think fear is real, and people are also feeling that that anti-Asian racism needs to be taken more seriously. And I certainly agree with Mr. Pan that we have to take a more structural approach, a whole of society approach. And some of the things that we can do individually is to educate ourselves, take this opportunity to listen to and create a safe space to listen to the experience of Asian Canadians. Our history, our current experiences, and inside and outside Canada.
Right, and just very quickly here, Vincent, I did want to ask, and I want to also ask you, Teresa, eventually after we hear from Vincent, what you want to hear from leaders, because we did hear from President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday condemning what happened in Atlanta. But what else do you want to see?
Well, I think that it's an acknowledgement that, of course, these incidents are horrible, and to be there for victims and for survivors, but to really understand that this is a problem that's been with us for a long time and requires some immediate and also long-term actions. So I think on the immediacy front, we know that as schools continue to reopen, that parents are afraid to send their children back for fear of bullying, for fear of harassment. And so schools need to be prepared to address that in ways that make all of us feel confident and safe.
And sorry, Vincent, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did want to get Teresa in here very quickly because we are short on time. What do you want to see from Canada, Teresa?
Well, I think that for the institutions to work closely with the community and government to support hate crime, intervention, and also from the Canadian Race Religion Foundation perspective, we are actually partnering with the YWCA to start a campaign next Monday called Block Hate. Because we have learned from research that online hate is a precursor to actually in-person attack. So we want to play a role to stop that, and we are starting this campaign next Monday.
Okay, thank you both so much. I'm sorry that we are short on time here, but it was such a pleasure to have both of you to speak on this, Vincent Pan and Teresa Woo-Paw. Thank you again.
Thank you.